Hello, Packers fans. Welcome into PackersNews.com. I'm Kassidy Hill, joined by Ryan Wood here on a fairly busy week here in Green Bay. Ryan, how
A little bit,
to say?
a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I think this is one of the days where we get a little bit of a break before it kicks all back up again. But
Hey, talk for yourself, Cassie. I've been working since 8 a.m.
that's that's true. That's true.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
much to get into. Because it's draft week, which is always a crazy week, an exciting week for sure. There's a palpable energy around teams during draft week. But also just a little bit of news that trickled in on Monday. The Packers have reportedly finalized the details of the trade with the New York Jets. I can actually see Brian Gutekunst on the TV behind me here now.
Oh,
um,
look at
the details emerged 10 minutes before he was set to speak with us yesterday to preview the draft. So of course the news sort of turned to Rodgers. Brian Gutekunst was careful to say more than one time that the deal is not official yet, so he was hesitant to speak on some of the details. But you asked him, is it essentially just a matter of paperwork at this point? And he said yes. So just I kind of want to start with your thoughts on the details that did emerge, which is that they would be switching the first round pick. So the Packers would move to 13 this year. They would receive the Jets' second round pick, which is number 42. And then the big part, they have a conditional pick for next year's draft that could turn into a first round pick if Aaron Rodgers plays 65% of the plays this year. Seems like a haul.
Yeah, the swap. If I was a betting man, or if I was me, I wouldn't have been shocked with the swap. I don't know that I would have seen that coming, but that wasn't the shocking part.
Mm-hmm.
I was pretty stunned, Cassidy, with that 2024 piece.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see, that conditional second round piece is only conditional in name only. All Aaron Rodgers has to do is play 65% of snaps, and that's a first round pick.
Right.
That's a first round pick. Unless he gets injured, and it can happen. He's an age 40 quarterback going into his age 40 season. He had 3 injuries last year, but he's going to want to prove a point,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's going to want to play. He went through the 3 injuries last year, and he stayed on the field to prove a point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that changing in New York. That's a first-round pick. They got an extra first-round pick, and obviously the 42 pick in the second round Friday, which we both knew was likely. That's a really nice cherry on top, and the fact that it's not tied to what they do on the field, it's not
Or
tied
to next year.
Yeah, it's not tied to whether or not Aaron Rodgers retires after this season. Probably won't happen. I think from the Jets side, what you're seeing, they're really confident that they're going to be really good with Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. They think this is the piece they need to go win a Super Bowl. That's how they feel. And there's some confidence, at least some, that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to just retire at the end of this season. That they don't make that trade with no conditions attached to that if they're not at least a little confident. We'll see. But yeah, that was the piece that surprised me, Cassidy.
The fact that it's not just one sec, sorry about it. Hit me at the worst possible time.
I hate it when that happens.
Just to hammer down on something else you said and expound upon it, the fact that it's not tied to 2024 is huge, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Because a conditional pick, I was expecting there to be a conditional pick, but I thought it would be entirely tied to whether or not he played more than 1 year. Mm-hmm. All he has to do is show up and play this year. So that's huge. As you said, that's a first round pick. You can take the word conditional off of it. We do have a couple of questions coming in. Let's jump to this one from Callum, because I know it's of a lot of importance to Packers fans. What happens to the contract now that Aaron Rodgers is with the Jets? He is still a dead cap hit, correct, Ryan? But that number changes.
Yeah, so they're adding $8.7 million to their cap this year that they're assuming. The biggest news, the biggest piece for this is that the Packers are off the books with Aaron Rodgers after 2023. Mm-hmm. And they're in cap hell right now. Brian Gutekunst said it yesterday. They've done some things the last few years to chase something that they don't normally do. And what that is pretty extreme in Aaron Rodgers' case. They never push out future guaranteed years. They never put themselves in that position, ever. And that's what they did with his contract that he signed a year ago. They've restructured everybody and guaranteed roster bonuses, all kinds of things to try to save money on the cap. They put themselves in a bad cap position, and they're still there for 2023. But with Aaron Rodgers off the books now after this season, they're able to finally, rebuild's going to be a word you hear a lot with Jordan Love and new quarterback starting week to week. It's a rebuild on the field. It's a rebuild from their cap structure standpoint and getting salary cap relief that they desperately need starting after this year. So that's a huge plus for this team.
I'm going to take a quick promo plug. You and I both use the term rebuild, and I think we both have a good justification for doing so. Our colleague, Tom Silverstein, disagrees and has a decent argument for disagreeing as well. But you can catch that entire debate along with a lot of other talk on the new episode of the Green 19 podcast, which is up wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcast. You can listen straight through Audio Boom, straight through Packers News as well. You can also watch it on YouTube. So go catch that new episode. This is a really good question from Carson, and I don't think we're going to fully know the answer yet. But now that Rodgers has moved on, is there any sense of what happened in 2020, or it happened in 23, I think you mean 22 there, outside of the thumb?
My big question, and, I didn't think of this until after the season. And after the season, when I thought of this, the light bulb came on. I kicked myself for not asking this. I hope someone in New York asks him. The big question to me that's unanswered, if you go back to the start of 2020, Aaron Rodgers is coming off a pretty lackluster 2019, his first year in Matt LaFleur's offense. Certainly, they were 13-3 on the field. They played well. They went to the NFC Championship game, but he was not at an MVP caliber. There was nothing from 2019 that would have foreshadowed that he could be a 2020 MVP, have one of the greatest seasons for a quarterback in NFL history, which is what 2020 was. And in training camp that year, he said that he got something right with his lower throwing base, that there was a rep in practice that kicked it back in. He'd been thinking about early in his career, and his throwing base all of a sudden changed for the better almost overnight. And that's the one thing I wonder. He's an aging quarterback. He did not play well at all last year, before the thumb, after the thumb. Aaron Rodgers was not good, but he is Aaron Rodgers. And I wonder, Kassidy, if there's a fix out there that's as simple as getting away from that fundamental that was important to the renaissance of 2020, 2021. Maybe not. Maybe he's just a quarterback going to his age 40 season and Father Time's undefeated, and that's never going to change in the NFL. But I think that'll be very interesting.
I'm going to add on to Carson's question here then. Could the simple fix be getting back with Hackett?
That's not going to hurt. And it doesn't hurt that they have Alan Lazard either, because their chemistry is solid. He's got someone coming in that he knows on the field. With that said, I know Robert Saleh said at the NFL owners meeting that he doesn't care if Aaron Rodgers participates in the offseason at all, but my goodness, man, you got a new quarterback and a new offense. And I know it's the same offensive coordinator he's worked with, but it's still it's new pieces.
Right.
You got a lot of new pieces. You got one receiver, you got to get your protection schemes right. You got to get your timing with your receivers. It takes work. And Kassidy, we don't just show up to the Facebook Live and start talking Packers like we know everything. We put in the work every day. That's on a much grander scale.
Just kidding.
Well, not going to flatter us too much, but on a much grander scale, you don't just show up at the office and expect to get your work production done. It takes work. You have to put in the work.
Yeah, exactly. And this is going to be an entire new situation. He might need to show up just to, figure out where the bathroom is and kind of learn his way around. There are some questions in here about the draft, and I want you guys to know I see those. We're going to come back to those, but I want to stay on this Rodgers topic while we're kind of on a roll here. So I'm going to jump over here to Linda's question. My biggest disappointment in Rodgers is that he didn't attend the optional training camp last year with new receivers. So that kind of goes into your point that, this could be even more important to do so now with the Jets.
Yeah, and it's when he was dragging his heels, it was kind of poo-pooed. Off-season to off-season, the significance of that. I think he saw the significance of that. And I think he saw the significance of that last year with dealing with rookie receivers, who both had really fine years, by the way. Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs were rookies, were awfully productive. That Christian Watson was a game changer as a rookie. Don't often see that from a receiver going from college to the NFL. How much better could they have been with more work? Yeah. But you also saw what's the first thing Jordan Love did? We before this trade became pretty obvious, and it didn't just happen yesterday. We've known since Aaron Rodgers went on Pat McAfee and said he wanted to play for the Jets, and this is going to happen. But before that, even there were tea leaves, and one of the tea leaves was the Jets restructuring all their contracts, and another tea leaf, the fact that Jordan Love, first thing he did was he went out to California with Aaron Jones, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and he started working with them. Probably a good idea because you don't just show up to the office expecting to put in good work. You have to actually put in the work behind the scenes when nobody else is looking. Get your timing right, get a good foundation so that when you come to team facilities, you have something to build off of. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers doesn't need that at this point in his career for himself, but the people around Aaron Rodgers, when you have a quarterback that's saying there's two offenses, there's the playbook and there's the offense I run. Well, it might behoove everyone around you to get an idea of how you run the offense and get as much exposure to that as possible.
And just a side note on that, Aaron Jones told us when he met with a few media members before leaving out on the tailgate tour that was not just, we all happened to be in the same place at the same time. They took flights. They planned that. They made that happen. So it took a little bit of effort, but it was important to all of them to have those couple of days together working just to kind of get some of that chemistry. So to your point, they worked at it and put in the work to do so. Okay, a counterpoint. We see a lot of people kind of excited about this new phase of the Packers. Jesse says he thinks it's a mistake. Do you think there is a possible point there that even with Rodgers' age, that this was a mistake for the Packers to move on and go ahead and go to Jordan Love?
There's more than one element in play here. I do not think it was a mistake. I think it's the only recourse that they could have made. When Aaron Rodgers essentially ghosts you and he's going into his age 40 season and he wasn't good last year and you're not winning a Super Bowl with him this year and you've got a first-round pick that's waited 3 years that you know nothing about, it's not the right option. It's the only option you have. This is the only recourse they could have taken. That doesn't mean I think the Packers are just going to be magically in great hands with Jordan Love. I have no idea. They might be. They might not be. We have no idea. And I said it on the podcast, Kassidy. There's two things that were very apparent at the NFL owners meeting. They're very excited organizationally to find out what they have in Jordan Love to kind of go on this trip of discovery with him. And it's a new quarterback. What can he? He's a first-round pick. He was drafted in the first round for a reason. He's got the measurables. He's got the talent. What can he do? And they have no idea what the answer to that question is. They have no clue. So, yes, it was the only option they could have taken. For that reason, I don't say it's a mistake. When you're staring at one option, you don't take the option. That's the mistake. That doesn't mean that they're going to be great in 2023 or that Jordan Love's going to pan out. For that, you got to stay tuned.
Jared, I do see your question here about the cap. We did discuss that at the top. You can watch the replay of this afterwards. Didn't want to ignore it because it is a good question, but want to kind of move on to some fresh ones here as well. And change the field. Okay, is this one of the things that you were talking about, Ryan? Wade says, major point in Rodgers' career is that during the 49ers playoff game, Rodgers needed to move the ball a 3rd and 4 first downs and change the field position and simply kick a field goal. He didn't. Is that kind of what you were talking about just there being two different offenses there too?
Pete Doherty has a wonderful column today recapping Aaron Rodgers' career. And part of that column, he found a quote, I believe it was from ESPN.com, if I'm remembering correctly, from 2017 on the 2010 NFC Divisional playoff game in Atlanta. Quite possibly the greatest game of Aaron Rodgers' career. And one of the things that Mike Holmgren says, and this is Mike Holmgren, this is one of, as Pete says in this column, one of the finest offensive minds in NFL history. One of the things that he said, just kind of thrown into the quote, but it really stood out to me, was he could do everything he wanted, but get first downs. he could get first downs.
Mm-hmm.
That's the job, to stay on schedule with down and distance, to accumulate first downs. That often gets overlooked with everything else, especially with Aaron Rodgers, because he's a shiny quarterback. He's a shiny talent. The things that he did were rare. But something that's not rare, that's very rudimentary, is get first down, stay on schedule. And that's something that he excelled at his best. I mean, they would chew up first downs. There were games in his career where that wouldn't go right, but that's going to be the task for Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur.
Mm-hmm.
Can you keep the offense as a play caller, as a first-time starting quarterback? Can you keep the offense on schedule?
You never go broke taking a profit.
That's right.
2 6-yard gains give you move the chains. Let's kind of move on to a little bit of the Jordan Love part of it. Frank says, I think Love will put up good numbers, but my fear is he will throw lots of interceptions. Ryan, I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's not even a fear, it's a reality.
Let him throw interceptions.
He will throw a lot of interceptions. Yeah, and Kassidy, I know that you always say, you covered Trevor Lawrence and his first year, and you kind of saw something about a young quarterback stretching his boundaries to discover what they were.
Right. You don't know what you can get away with till you don't know what you can't get away with. So let him throw them.
And you know what, too, by the way? What did Aaron Rodgers do last year?
Threw more interceptions than he had since his rookie year.
He threw quite a few interceptions. So, it was funny. Brian Gutekunst was asked yesterday, is this a risk? And his answer, he's like, well, yeah, it's a risk with everything in the NFL. Of course it's a risk.
Yeah.
We were 8-9 last year.
Exactly.
This is not – they're coming off the NFC Championship game in 2007.
Right.
They were 8-9. They had a chance to sneak back door into the playoffs. All they had to do was beat the Detroit Lions at home,
mm-hmm.
and they couldn't do that.
Yeah.
That minimizes some risk.
Linda asked also about Jordan. I also feel like I know very little about Love's personality. Is he low-key, a great leader? Brian, I'll let you answer this too, but I was just going to add my 2 cents. There's still so much we don't know about Jordan Love in terms of how he'll lead a locker room. What I do know are his teammates love him. They love him. And he is much different from Aaron Rodgers in his terms of leadership style. That's not to say one is better than the other. It's just different. And I think it's going to create a different vibe around the team.
See, I don't think we know anything about his leadership style yet because he hasn't had a lead. Like Jordan Love's one job for the past 3 years has been to not rock the boat, be a good backup. And he's done that one job masterfully. He's had to walk on eggshells. Don't be a disturbance. You don't want that from your backup quarterback. Now it's very different. Now he's in the spotlight. Now he is tasked with being a leader. It doesn't matter he's a first-time starter. By definition of playing the quarterback position, you are a leader for your football team. He hasn't. He's never done that. He's never been a first-time starter. I think one of the great mysteries that's going to continue to be unraveled, and it's going to take time, is what is that personality? What is that leadership identity that he has? I'm looking forward to seeing that. I don't know that I can really put an answer to that right now, but we're going to find out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. How is he going to lead an entire locker room?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what you're tasked with as the quarterback. I'm thinking of like those times when we go out to practice and like you notice Jordan Love has a handshake with every person on the offense, and every single one of them is different too. Little things like that. He's a little more loose. He dances with the guys, but that could change when it's all placed on his shoulders too.
I have to think that his teammates have a tremendous amount of respect for him and how well he's filled this backup duty for 3 years. That's not easy. And any other first round pick, you come in and you're playing. Devontae Wyatt, he got to play. It took time, but for Devontae Wyatt, it was about a 3/4 season wait. And talking with him last season, that was not easy. To do it for 3 years, everyone in that locker room knows how hard that is when you're a first-round pick. And he handled that job really well. I've got to think that his teammates have a lot of respect for him because of that.
We don't have too much more time here, and we're going to get into the draft later in the week. But there are a couple of draft questions here I want to grab just because they are still relative to this trade. the Jets and the Packers essentially swapped their first-round picks. So the Packers are now at number 13. Nibs Senor, that's how I'm going to say it, asked, does going up 2 places really change draft tactics? Ryan, on paper, it's only 2 spots, but does it make a big difference?
Well, I asked Brian Gutekunst this yesterday without asking him. I basically, because the trade's not final yet, and Brian Gutekunst made it abundantly clear that until it's final, he can't really be talking about this.
Right.
So I asked him how much does he view the difference moving up 2 picks, middle of the first round, should that happen by Thursday, and it will. And he basically said, if I didn't think it was important, I wouldn't have done it. So yeah, it matters. It's 100 points on Jimmy Johnson's draft trade value chart. That's the 100th pick, the equivalent of the 100th pick in the draft, which is a late 3rd round pick. Just those 2, they're essentially getting a late 3rd round pick in value by moving up 2 spots. Every other team not named the Packers, not cursed in the 3rd round like the Packers are. You find starters in the 3rd round. So there's certainly value there. And like Brian Gutekunst said, if he didn't think it was important, he wouldn't have done it.
And now they have that 13th pick. They have an extra 2nd round pick, which kind of goes into Dave's questions. Teams need an influx of new talent. Do the Packers trade down and grab another 2nd and 3rd? Is that on the table?
It's certainly possible. I know Spoon in the podcast made the point that they're in tackle alley there at 13. They could certainly stay and take a tackle. Mm-hmm. No question that could be one of the many options that they have with that pick. But if they want to, the sweet spot of this draft is the 2nd round. Mm-hmm. If they want to get more picks in the sweet spot, that I wouldn't be shocked by that. Let's put it that way.
And then I see this question in here a couple of different times, so I'm going to pop up Antoine's version here, though. With Rodgers gone, will Bakhtiari be next? Ryan, Bakhtiari made some headlines this past few weeks when he did a podcast and constantly referred to the Packers as they, not we. Is there anything to that?
No, they restructured him. They're going to bring him back. Everything that that's what I wrote about this morning for our draft preview. Everything that Brian Gutekunst does from here on out needs to be with the intention of making his new quarterback's life easier. Mm-hmm. When you've got an Aaron Rodgers, you can take 15 of your 18 picks on defensive players, as they did since 2005, because you've got a 4-time MVP that can cover the warts of everyone that's directly around him. Mm-hmm. That's what a 4-time MVP does. When you're a first-time starting quarterback, you're not expected to cover the warts. And making Jordan Love's life easier is a massive priority. Having David Bakhtiari blocking your blind side is a big part of that. There's a reason why they restructured his contract. So, David Bakhtiari's being honest. He said they're in a rebuild. They are in a rebuild. That's how people in the locker room feel. Brian Gutekunst can't say that. And he's not, to Spoon's point on the podcast, he's not acting that way. I mean, he's retaining Aaron Jones and he's keeping the defense intact, and he's not jettisoning every veteran and just ripping it up. With that said, a lot of these moves, like keeping Aaron Jones, is designed to make your quarterback's life easier. So, from his standpoint, they are in a rebuild, and there's no indication now how that'll go. But David Bakhtiari is going to be part of it.
Last question here before we sign off. Because of the move to 13 and a little bit of the tongue-in-cheek, they haven't drafted a wide receiver or tight end in the first round since Aaron Rodgers has been the quarterback. There is talk about possibly grabbing a receiver here in the first round. Chris asked, with Watson and Dobbs as young, solid, upcoming wide receivers, do we really need to go after JSN if he's available? And I'm going to expand upon this, not even just JSN, but do you go after a receiver or a tight end in the first round? Do you need to?
I don't think you need to do anything. Need to me is not the right word with that, whether it's edge rusher, whether it's tackle. First round's about what you want. And that's best player available. That's adding talent. I don't think at the end of the day, it comes down to their internal evaluation. Could they draft a tight end in the first round? They absolutely could if they truly believe Dalton Kincaid is the next George Kittle, then absolutely 13 is not too rich for that. Otherwise, It's kind of like buying a Hummer instead of a Honda, right? I mean, tight end. This is a deep tight end class. If you don't feel like you've got the sure thing that you really feel forticated in and really feel good about, you can get one in the second round. Same thing at receiver. Is JSN the missing slot piece that they need, and then this offense is just going to sing? Well, if you feel that way, taking him 13 or moving up a couple spots if you need to, sure, that's a fine pick. If you don't need to. So, they've got so many needs on their roster. They're not pigeonholed into taking a need. And it's always the annual debate, drafting best player available, drafting need. They're going to go best player available. But they're going to start whittling away some of those roster needs as well.
13 is mighty rich for a tight end. That's a little too rich for me.
What if he's George Kittle? You don't draft George Kittle 13?
If he's George Kittle of now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the tight end market is changing. I mean, Kyle Pitts getting drafted in the top 10, that doesn't change the tight end market because that's a generational talent. You understand that. Drafting a tight end like Dalton Kincaid, who was very good, but drafting a tight end like Dalton Kincaid at 13, that changes the tight end market. The Packers are changing the market for the position.
Here's the way I look at it. If they drafted Dalton Kincaid or Michael Mayer, number 13, they're thinking that he is going to be a George Kittle type tight end. And so I understand what they're thinking. And then it's up to them to be right. If they're not right, I think at that point you can say, this was a waste of a 13th overall pick. If they're wrong about it.
Yeah.
But if they're right, it's a good pick.
Yes.
And that's why these instant draft grades we all read every year, they make no sense. It takes a couple years to know whether or not you got a draft pick right.
Yeah.
So if they go out and get Dalton Kincaid number 13, that's what they think. Then they just have to be right.
Well, we still have a lot to talk about when it comes to the draft. We will be doing so throughout the week on PackersNews.com. And then Thursday, starting around 6 p.m. all the way up until Saturday evening, when the UDFA list comes out, we will have wall-to-wall coverage for you on PackersNews.com. We will be doing more Facebook Lives, podcasts. Ryan will have instant stories. Spoon will have his live blog going. We've got more coverage than you can swing a dead cat at. That's a very country saying. It just slipped right out. Ryan, we've monopolized a lot of your time. I know you've still got a lot to do today to get ready for the draft as well. So we're going to say goodbye. Thank you all for your questions. Thank you for joining us. This is not the podcast. Woo!
It's all blurred together at this point, isn't it, Kassidy?
Yeah.
Where am I?
Thank you for being here for our Facebook and YouTube Live. There we go. That's what this is. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next time.